American sons and daughters are killing children and civilians and enemy combatants and also being killed by them for the sake of a foreign country's agenda. As long as that is happening, we are not free. We are not sovereign. We are not independent. We are not America. You know what? Trump has had 15 months. It ain't happening.
Nick Fuentes just blasted Trump for abandoning American sovereignty for the sake of a foreign country, of Israel's agenda, as is demonstrated by the new regime change war against Iran, which doesn't have this popular support of the American populace. What does this mean for politics going forward in the United States? Is populism just dead? How do we deal with this? And why is this so crystal clear? Nick breaks those things down right here. Let's check him out. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
You need to draw some conclusions here. The following, which are, last year was arguably the mass awakening. This is when all bets were off and everybody got red-pilled about Israel. Everybody woke up, right? Everybody's talking about it. I went super viral. Other people went super viral. Piers Morgan, Megyn Kelly, Tucker, Candace. The pro-Israel lobby has lost so many of the major influencers, arguably lost the public, lost the propaganda war. It's a crisis for the pro-Israel lobby in America. And it was in the midst of that we go to war with Iran. What does this tell us? It tells us that popular opinion and public sentiment has basically no relationship with outcomes, with policy outcomes. How many people did we red pill in 2025? Maybe more than ever. Maybe more than ever before. 2024, 2025. Maybe more people are awake. More people are red pilled. It's hard to quantify. But at the minimum, you know it's way more than before. And it's way more mainstream and way more normalized. And yet, just not even a few months later, we're in Israel's war in Iran. It's hard to quantify the opposition to it, but it's not mobile. Where's the protest? Where's the mass movements? Where's the outcry? Where are the people that have had enough? Like, where is that? Oh, it isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that this is the case. There isn't a mass anti-war movement taking to the streets to demonstrate this, but yet every poll shows the unpopularity of this. And I think it's a fair point that Nick raises here, that this ultimately shows that our government isn't reflective of our interests. We're not the true constituents of our ruling class. Guess who is? It's the lobbies, it's the military-industrial complex, it's AIPAC, it's the bomb makers, it's the banks, it's the propagandists that are tied into prioritizing this foreign regime at our detriment. That does play out, and it's not the first time it's played out, but I think it becomes more and more apparent the more and more they behave this way, and in such brazen ways that favor this foreign country above the objectives of American citizens and their priorities and their interests, which are so tarnished and perverted by this criminal syndicate we know as the government. I think that's true. It's not just Trump that's done this. We had the TARP bailouts. Those weren't popular at all. We had all sorts of COVID regime nonsense and maniacal things that weren't popular with the large majority of Americans, but it doesn't ultimately matter. They serve a different constituency than they tell you they serve. They say they serve you, but they serve the politically connected that benefit in terms of control and in terms of wealth from these twisted priorities.
Because it doesn't matter how much you wake the people up, how much you red pill anybody, you still get a war in Iran. Because what our government does has nothing to do with what the people are actually thinking. And these protests that crop up from time to time, let me ask you this. Sometimes you see something happen in domestic or international policy, and the next day you see a bunch of marchers out there with pre-made signs, t-shirts. You got to wonder, where did they get those signs? Where did they get the initiative? All these deadbeats and fatties and degenerates, where did all these people, they don't even have jobs, but yet within 12 hours, they're all in Times Square with pre-printed signs and t-shirts. You realize even the protests are fake. The protests have always been fake. AstroTurfed. Want to know why there's no mass protests against the war in Iran? No one's funding them. No one's funding them. You don't have anybody, you don't have that machine putting all that out there.
I think this is fair too. There's no doubt that many of the protests that have emerged, I think No Kings is a great example, are orchestrated, are manufactured. Not to say that some people that attended those protests weren't genuinely upset about this presidency. Of course they were, but they had mass waves of funding behind it. I think the last genuine organic protests that emerged in the United States were the Tea Party and Occupy, both emerging at relatively the same time. And guess what? They actually had some overlap. They saw the corrupt financial system for what it was and agreed with each other on that essentially. Though they came from different social positions and things like that, what did the government do? Well, it's clear that they injected the culture war into the populace inorganically. You can see this from any demonstration of the words that were used to be printed in news stories at the times. War on women, war on the sexes, all these class warfare tactics to split those two groups apart from each other at a time where they would otherwise have overlap. So yeah, a lot of the protests are inorganic. I don't think that's always been the case. If you go back to like protests against the Stamp Act and the Alien and Sedition Act, yeah, I mean, there were banner wavers spearheading those protests, but it wasn't just completely bought off and completely manufactured. There was some organic activity behind that. Now you see it all controlled and co-opted, so I think that's fair, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't protest these things. We should make that clear too.
And how about the media? Where are they? You would think when something is really unpopular, the media, the Fifth Estate, which represents the people's interest against the government, maybe they would express the popular discontent. The media is going to punish the administration. Where are they? Oh, they're nowhere to be found. They support it. They support it. They cautiously support it. Why? Because the media is the CIA. The media is the Fortune 500. Who owns the Washington Post? Jeff Bezos. Who owns Fox? Rupert Murdoch. Who owns Paramount, Warner Brothers, Skydance, TikTok? Larry Ellison and his son. So this tells you something about how the world works, what's going on in our country. Trump has betrayed all promises, every fundamental principle, crossed all red lines, done the unthinkable, so unpopular, no appetite for it. And it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, that's the sick thing, isn't it? That despite all the outcries, all the perversions, all the betrayals, it ultimately doesn't matter. Now, that might be not true long term. He's going to lose the midterms, and I know it's a circus. That's just another part of the uniparty that calls for the same strategy. The establishment Democrats are not going to push back against this war in Iran. Many of them support it, including Chuck Schumer and John Fetterman. Essentially, a lot of the Democratic establishment do. But at the same time, it's going to tarnish the perspective of people that think that they can just keep on getting away with this no matter what. We've seen progressive declines in the popularity of these wars to the point that we're in a 15 to 20% popularity war. Could that go down to 5%? I think you would see much more of an uproar if we continue on this trajectory, picking Israel above American citizens and making it so crystal clear. Because right now, they're losing the culture, but politics is a fast follower to the culture. Politics is downstream from where the culture's at. I think Andrew Breitbart was right about that when he said that. So we might see a completely different political class that may, of course, will engage in the same sort of tomfoolery and propaganda and murder sprees, but it will be less probably controlled by the pro-Israel apparatus as times past in, say, 10 years. I think that's true, too.
Where's the protest? Where's the outcry? Where are the demonstrations? What about the political capital? What about the approval ratings? None of it matters. None of it matters. And now the only reason why now maybe Trump has to pump the brakes is because the oil prices went a little bit too high. The oil prices went past $120 per barrel for crude oil. And now the Wall Street Journal, and now the New York Times, and now the Washington Post, now they want to rein it in. It's funny how that works, isn't it? look, we got Trump in the White House. And by that, I mean, this is the present situation. This is what we have. And he folded. He folded under zero pressure. Got to the top, climbed all the way, and then folded. Folded every time. Folded on COVID, folded on BLM, folded on this. That's the way out of it. Other than that, all you could do is pray. But don't tell me it's about waking up the masses. Fuck the masses. That's what I say. You know what I say about the people? The people? Highly overrated. Highly overrated. And I could say that because I'm the Dark Knight here. You know, I'm not running for office. But I'm sick to my stomach by what I'm seeing, how people are being tricked on Twitter. And frankly, it's a lot of stupid boomers that don't know any better. A lot of the young people know better. But even the young people, constantly getting duped, constantly getting tricked. A lot of young people that are all on board. Oh, we got to talk about Muslim immigration. Muslim immigration? Hey, we're at war with Iran, dumbass. Now is actually not the time. Oh, all of a sudden, we just got done finishing mass deportations. Now we're in a war with Iran with no way out that is wildly unpopular. Now the consultants and the paid influencers, now they want to talk to us about ending mass immigration from Muslims. Super interesting.
Of course, that's part of the propaganda. Of course, they'll talk about the threat presented by radical Islam when it really is the Zionists and the Jewish supremacists that have operational influence over our government and do in fact occupy it to some extent. That's the only time that they'll warn of this threat. Will they warn about the influx of mass migrations from these war-torn countries like Somalia throughout the last 2 decades? No, they won't warn about that at the time. They'll just warn about it in the abstract. Why? Because that doesn't suit their propaganda purpose on behalf of Israel in this moment. I do disagree with Nick, though. F the people, screw the people. No, actually, it's the landed elites that are screwing us every single time. It's them, if any, that should be screwed. And why would we paint such a broad brush about the people in their totality? The people in their totality are just, you know, multitudes of individuals, many of which do cling to stupid, totalitarian, propagandistic, tribal associations. But at the same time, I'll take the people against the elites any day. Even left-wing populists that don't agree with me with economics can see how perverted and tarnished this is. So yeah, I side with them above the elites and alternative elite that you think will march into Washington and save the day. Some kind of new MAGA Caesar that's better than Trump, as Nick often purports is the only salvation. I don't think that's any sort of salvation. I think it's pushing back at the central government at the local level through nullification, withholding reserve units. Stop helping the feds enforce their treacherous laws. That's what we need. We need less of thinking that the federal government or the right person walking into it is our ultimate salvation. That's what I'd say.
Awesome, finally. But people eat it up. They eat it right up. And you know who the biggest culprits are? These happy-go-lucky, naive, like girl dad types. You know, they're on Twitter. They think they're so naughty because they have an Anon account. They're on Twitter with their little Anon account. Says Heritage American in it. I could never say these things at the water cooler work. I tried to get my wife to watch some Blaze show. And then they go on Twitter and they talk about Trump is truly a genius, blah, blah, blah. American sons and daughters are killing children and civilians and enemy combatants and also being killed by them for the sake of a foreign country's agenda. As long as that is happening, we are not free. We are not sovereign. We are not independent. We are not America. So don't call yourself a patriot. Don't call yourself American. Don't call yourself America first if you are not opposing this with every cell in your body. Otherwise, you are a liar and a hypocrite.
Well, I'm with him on that. This sure is a perverted campaign and a perverted crusade, again, on behalf of Israel. It is un-American. It does strip us of our sovereignty, of Americans' interests in this time of crisis in which many people can't afford basic standards of living. They can't afford food. They can't afford fuel. They march into the gas station and see how much chicken and beef cost compared to, say, a few years back. And they're still being told and propagandized that, hey, no worry, inflation is low. And what do they mean by that? That the dollar's still being debased. It's just being debased at a slightly lower rate than the highest rate in U.S. history, essentially, in 2020. That's what we got from the COVID regime and the spending sprees that accommodated that, which, by the way, in tandem with that meant funding Ukraine $200 billion down the drain, and oh yeah, funding Israel to enact a genocide and now a regime change operation in Iran. That's what that meant. So yeah, if you're not against this, I don't know what to say, because I'm against this like my life depends upon being against it. That's what I think. This is an existential crisis that will unwind the American way in favor of the empire builders, as we are in a late stage empire where the military stretched thin. They expend men and women from America for Israel and Netanyahu. Of all people, of Netanyahu, that's who they're dying for. It's sinister, it's not acceptable, and it's definitely not American first. So I'm with Nick on that one.
That is what matters right now. We can resume all the other stuff later. We can literally resume any other disagreement after we're out of this war. It makes me sick. It's disgusting. This is all going towards building the third temple and the Antichrist being seated on his throne. And you're talking about immigration right now? You know what? Trump has had 15 months. It ain't happening. This is what it's all about, folks. Everything else is the dress rehearsal for this moment. Okay, this is when it matters. This is one of these dividing lines. It's not an exaggeration. Like COVID, like the Trump election in 2016, this is one of these dividing lines where this is definitive. This is everything. Where you stand on this issue tells me everything I need to know about you. And how hardcore are you? As far as I'm concerned, there's no excess of opposing this war. This is a war of choice. This is a war of aggression. This is an unwinnable war that nobody asked for. We were dragged into it. They admit it by Israel. We all knew it was coming. They were telling us, well, at least you should have known. I told you. But that doesn't matter now. What matters now is what you do now. What matters now is, are you going to speak out against it? Are you going to use your platform? Or are you going to be a part of this machine? Are you going to be a part of the problem? It's a time for choosing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with them on that. In one hand, I will unite with anyone to do good and no one to do wrong. That's paraphrasing a quote by Frederick Douglass, and I'm with them on that. But there are these very important issues that seem to transcend our time in some respect. Essentially, there has been that, since I've grown up, it's been issues like 9/11, the response to that, the war on terror, the Patriot Act, the surveillance apparatus, whistleblowers like Assange and Snowden. How do people behave toward that? The COVID regime, the war in Ukraine, the proxy war against the nuclear power in Russia, and then the Israel first wars of choice and military operations to support genocide and the Greater Israel Project. All those things matter a lot. So yeah, if you're looking at this from a distant perspective, you should prioritize this issue above basically all others right now, because this is truly ruining the fabric of American sovereignty. We have an occupied government where this foreign lobby that gets away with it for saying, hey, we're just Americans, but yet they lobby on every single aspect of what Netanyahu and the Israeli agenda is from within our own country, on behalf of a country that we're supplying subsidies and military intelligence and weaponry and cover diplomatically in the UN and the world community to support. So this is a time where it matters most. It matters, like Ron Paul going up on the presidential debate stage in 2008 and saying, they attack us because they're over there. This is blowback for our foreign policy that we got 9/11. When Ron Paul stood up and told Giuliani that was a heroic moment. That's a heroic moment when people called Fauci a charlatan, a fraud, like Rand Paul in those committee hearings, for doubling down on stupid anti-science propaganda that ruined American lives, brought totalitarianism to the American doorstep. 6-foot rules, vaccine mandates, curfews, governor stay-at-home orders. All this was literally from George Orwell, and that might be too charitable, to 1984. So that is what we're dealing with now. This does matter most. Nick is right about that. It behooves everyone to focus on this, to drive away these stupid, absurd propaganda narratives about this war. How Iran was a threat to the United States? I'm sorry, no. That doesn't compute. That doesn't make any sense to any reasonable American. Americans are dealing with debt, inflation, cost of living. And that's why that Trump has already decided to give this away. He decided to burn political capital over Israel first and covering up the Epstein scandal for the sake of the Democrats. They work for each other ultimately. And no, I don't think we're going to get major policy shifts with the Democratic establishment in control. Not whatsoever. Even, if Gavin Newsom or AOC becomes president, we certainly won't. Will there be populism on the left now that rises up against it? I don't know. I don't see that. I don't see any semblance of that really happening. I don't see populism on the right being a thing, especially after Trump, when they're going to sell you Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance in 2028 either. So I hate to say that outside of dissidents, I don't think populism will be strong in the American political psyche. But will there be an off-ramp taken? I hope, because we can't bear boots on the ground for the stupid, fruitless, senseless affair that perverts the interests of Americans, many of which supported Trump because he promised to not end up creating new wars, to get out of the Middle East, as he blasted people like Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham for supporting. He's just been totally co-opted and controlled by the machine. And by the machine, I mean the Israel lobby, the banks, the military-industrial complex, and all the forces that he pretended for so long to be against, that won him the goodwill from the American people, totally squandered over Israel First empire building projects. Many such cases, but Trump is proving that right now. But what do you guys think? Think Nick Fuentes is right about that? What is the semblance of hope, or is there a solution to this from the federal level? It doesn't need to be pushback. Does it need to be the right political leader needs to be elected, or a new political party? What needs to happen to solve this? And, why is it that Americans are so willing to allow their sovereignty to be robbed? Is it just the propaganda? Is it going against the forces that will just claim anti-Semitism if you criticize any aspect of it? What is it that gets so many people to buy into this? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, if you like this video, please consider joining as a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button down below. And doing that makes you a member and grants you immediate access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. So you'll be able to watch all those videos right away. There's usually many of them to watch for you if you do that. I appreciate your support if you do become a member. And also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. That'll send you off to a website. You just plug in your email right there, and then I'll send you a full free copy of that book, no cost whatsoever, no obligation. And look, I have a few demands from this crazy, sinister war regime, and I won't apologize for them. No more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.